There's a lot of strife, hate, and suffering in the world. Look around. Who's helping? We know who's helping. David Eubank and the Free Burma Rangers. Get ready, you have not heard of a guy like David. The Free Burma Rangers is a multi-ethnic humanitarian service movement working to bring help, hope, and love to people in the conflict zones of Burma, Iraq, and Sudan. Working in conjunction with local ethnic pro-democracy groups, FBR trains, supplies, and later coordinates with what become highly mobile multipurpose relief teams. After training, these teams provide critical emergency medical care, shelter, food, clothing, and human rights documentation in their home regions. Support Save the Brave. Go to savethebrave.org and donate to our veteran friends. We fight together PTSD. If you want to support the Break It Down Show, go to breakitdownshow.com and donate to the PayPal link, buy our merch, or you can subscribe to any podcast platform. Alright, enough of me. Here comes David Eubank.
Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay
This
Moore.
is Greg Proops.
This is Jordan Harbinger.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan
This is
East.
Sebastian Younger.
This is Rick
This
Marotta.
is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
Hey, this is Skunk Baxter.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
Hello, I'm Dave Eubank, and this is the Break It Down Show.
And now, the Break It Down Show with John Leon Guerrero and Pete A. Turner.
We've got about a 4 or 5 second lag with David, and he's in Burma. So we're going to give him a pass on that, and we're just going to have some quiet time for anybody watching or listening to the show. That is why, and we'll get by with that. With us today as co-host is author, professor, R-rated Thomas Sowell, Wilfred Riley, who joins us. And I want to give Will a lot of room to talk because he's got a hard out in about half an hour. But you're part of the Free Burma Rangers, David. It's incredible what you guys do, a faith-based organization that goes out and provides help in the most dangerous places in the world. I mean, you were talking about the villagers that are near you being mortared recently and how their spirit is not broken. And you guys go there not to provide combat support, but to provide medical training and a variety of other things. Can you just talk about the basic mission of the Free Burma Rangers and where people get information so they can get up to speed on that? And we'll go from there.
Thanks. First, thanks for having me. Amazing technology, and I thank God for that. I remember once I was actually skydiving with my wife. We'd been surfing in the morning, spoke at a church, and skydived the same day. And I said, God, look what you let us humans do. We get to make this stuff. I mean, it's not even that important. So that means God loves us. You know, kind of like proof that God loves you is He made wine, or we made it, but He lets us drink it. I think it's awesome. Anyway, what's our job? Free Burma Rangers' job is to share God's love. That's number one. We have people from all faiths and religions, no religion. They're all welcome for love. For me, Jesus has put that in my heart. And our job is to go love people, help people. Mostly that's medical help, other physical needs, just food and shelter, and get the news. And we do that in places we're invited and in conflict areas. So we've been in Burma over 25 years. We also have been in Iraq and Syria over 5 years. We have teams there right now. We've been to Sudan a few years ago. But we're a small little organization. We have about 100 ethnic Burman relief teams in the different conflict areas of Burma. Burma's a 72-year civil war. And we're there, as you said, we're not there to fight the Burma army, although it's not immoral to do that. It's just not our job. But we're there to help give medical treatment to people who are being wounded or sick and hiding, and get the news out. And then in Iraq and Syria, the same. We were invited because people knew our work in Burma and said, man, you guys don't have any safety rules. Come over to Iraq. So we started out with the Yazidi people when ISIS had them up on Sinjar Mountain in northwest Kurdistan, northern Iraq. And then we were invited to Syria. And then we were in the Battle of Mosul. And so wherever we go, we want to do it for love.
The Yazidis come from Sinjar. I've been up there. I've worked in Mosul. And I think it's important just to say this. The Yazidis are not traditional Christians, if they're Christians at all, right? These, to the Iraqis, we'll say it from their point of view, who aren't Yazidi, these are devil worshipers, right? But this has no bearing on the human atrocity, because what we're looking at is, and I think the Yazidi would say they aren't Christians, but they are religious, like they believe in God. They just believe that God is all, get this, God is all forgiving, and he forgives Satan, and they all make up, and you need Satan to balance things out. And that's sort of how they get the satanic thing. Anyhow, that has no bearing on you guys providing effort when there's human atrocity. I'm curious about what you experienced in Iraq, but also who the heck calls you? Like, do they put a beacon up in the sky with a scroll and then you guys come running?
No, we're tiny. And I was a Ranger officer in the U.S. Army. I was in Special Forces in the U.S. Army. Before that, I was a missionary kid growing up in Thailand. Thai is my first language. I grew up hunting with tribal people. So we have different friends all over the world that know us from different ways. And in terms of Burma, there was people, my parents are missionaries in Thailand right now. My dad's 91, my mom's 89. They've been here 61 years in Thailand. And people know them. So back in 1993, there was a tribe in Burma that wanted help, met my parents and said, send your son. He's a soldier. We're at war and we need Jesus. And your son is trying to follow Jesus. We heard that. And that's how it happened. So my wife and I went. It was like, you ever seen the movie Mr. Bean? Like, we're Mr. Bean. My wife's not, but I am. And we got married in Malibu, California in 1993, and we went into Burma. And then we were doing that about 20 years. And a friend of mine who works for the big non-governmental organization said, we need help in Sudan, not South Sudan, but Sudan proper, because the Sudanese armed forces are bombing every day people in the Nuba Mountains, and no NGO will be at the real front line. They'll be back, but no one will go to the front line. Can you go? We'll arrange it. We prayed. Okay, we went. And I remember when we got to the Nuba Mountains, my kids were with me. We had bombed every single day. We're hiding in caves with the Nubans. And they're big dudes, man. They're big black guys that's where your defensive ends come from. They're powerful, great people. And I felt like a midget there. And my ethnic guys were even shorter, like, oh my gosh. But we became very close with the Nuban people. And I remember one of the Nuban leaders said, you brought your family. That means you don't want anything from us. And then later on, a friend of mine named Victor Marks, he has a ministry for kids in prison and many other things in America. He was the U.S. champion karate. He's the world's fastest disarmer still. You can look him up on YouTube, Victor Marks. And he knew us and he visited us in Burma. And he said, I checked my satellite. I have a little backpack satellite system I carry in the jungle. And this was in 2015 in northern Burma on a relief mission. Burma Army all around us. We're responding to attacks. And every day I check my email. I get this email and it says, Dave, please come to Iraq and help the Yazidi people and the Kurds. Because we know you don't have any rules. We have rules, but not safety rules. I don't want to die. But our rule is, Jesus, what do you want us to do? And his words, greater love hath no man than this. He laid down his life for his friends. If it's for love, it's not crazy. If it's for pride or anger, yeah, it can be crazy, but not love. And so he said, come. So that was that was an email. And I prayed about that. And we said, okay, we'll come, Victor. I'm saying our email, but the Burma Army's all around me. I can't get through them. But the next morning they moved trying to chase us, and they inadvertently opened up a way we could walk out many days. We got out. That's how we got to Iraq. Once we were in Iraq, I got a contact from someone in Syria that said, hey, we heard you're an organization that will go to the real front lines where people are getting shot. Can you come help us? So that's how it's been, just relationship on relationship.
So when you talk about relationships, how would someone become a free Burma Ranger? I guess more usefully, who are the people in the group? Are these ex-military guys, or are these people from all around the world that have joined up? Who's kind of on the team?
Well, the ethnic people comprise most of the Free Burma Rangers. We have 100 teams. They're small. There are 5 people on each team, men and women, mostly men, but women are welcome. The physical standard is don't give up. Don't give up. You got to walk almost everywhere. So they're pretty tough. So it's kind of like recruiting from a pool of Davy Crockett, Daniel Boones. These are tribal people who grew up in the mountains. They are tough. They can move all day, no canteen of water, drink in the stream, walk barefoot. And anyway, so most of the Free Burma Rangers in Burma are from the different tribes of Burma, men and women. And in the Middle East, it was people who joined us and said, hey, we want to be part of you. In the Middle East, it's civilians, ex-Iraqi soldiers. One of my team leaders was shot 6 times next to me. He survived it, and he joined us afterwards. He was a Muslim, he became a follower of Jesus. You don't have to be a follower of Jesus. One of my other team leaders is still Muslim. He's a Kurd, wonderful guy. One guy who saved my life twice in the Battle of Mosul is an atheist American Marine. And so you can have any religion or no religion. I guess probably not any religion. There's some pretty evil ones. But the real thing is come for love. You can believe whatever you want. Come for love. Do this for love. I myself and my family and most of our leaders are Christian, but we welcome all kinds of people. In terms of foreign volunteers, we have a whole mix. We've got 5 or 6 ex-military. We have an ex-SEAL, ex-Special Forces, ex-Marine, a couple ex-Army guys, but most of them are not military. Most are young men and women, and some older like me, I'm 60, that are doctors, are artists, are journalists, and go, I feel like God's called me to do this. So when someone emails me and says, hey, I want to be a Free Burma Ranger, the very first thing I say is pray. See if God wants you to do it. I mean, we're just one little tiny thing. And then come over and visit. And then they usually send a little resume. And, we like having doctors. We like having people who can make videos because our job, help people and get the news out. But we'll take anybody. But it's physically demanding and it's war. It's a war zone. So it's a little like being in the army. You got to follow orders because that's how war is. It's boom, boom, boom. And also we're not just independent actors doing whatever we want. When we go to Iraq, we're under the authority of the Iraqi army. With the Kurds, we're under the authority of the Kurdish government. And so we put ourselves under their authority and we don't just freewheel it. And then we try to augment and support whatever they're doing.
Turner, executive producer and host of the Break It Down. Go ahead, Will. Ask any questions you want.
Yeah, sorry. The time lag was getting a little confusing with the three of us. One of the things that I keep noticing is that you mention faith a lot, your own faith in Christ, faith in general for most of the members of the group. And there's been a whole dispute in what you could broadly call the NGO sector about faith-based and non-faith-based organizations and who gets funded by the different Western governments and so on. What role would you say that religion plays in what you do? I mean, for you, would this be possible without the religious backing? What's your take on that?
Well, for me personally, there's a lot of better people than me that can do it. Maybe without God, I can't. I am too proud, too selfish, too easily angered, too easily have my feelings hurt, too easily think bad thoughts, want things that aren't mine. I have so many weaknesses. But when I take those and I say, Jesus, forgive me, help me be better. He does it. I feel supernatural forgiveness. I remember once in the Battle of Mosul, we fought, we're not there to fight. We're there to help. But with ISIS, you don't have a choice. You can just die. I was shot in the arm. I was wounded 4 times. In Mosul, I had ISIS 2 yards from me. That's 2 yards. And they shot my friends. I lost 30 friends there. I lost one of my teammates. 4 of my team were wounded. So we were in some very close combat with ISIS. I never hated them until they killed a kid next to me that was my friend. I mean, they killed lots of kids. I saw that and I cried and it hurt me. And I was angry, but I did not hate. Hate is different than anger. But when they killed this kid that was close to me, it's hard for me to talk about without crying right now. Something changed. And I thought, that's it, man. Justice. I'm going to kill every one of these guys. I'm going to share the gospel of Jesus with people who need it. I'm going to give food and medicine. We're going to keep doing our humanitarian work. And in between, I'm going to hunt and kill ISIS. Not because I'm Superman, because I'm not, but because it's just wrong. I can't live with myself killing these kids. And I remembered, I said, God, isn't that justice? Because it sounds like justice to me. And I prayed and I opened the Bible at random 3 times, just put my finger like this. And I came up with the same verse idea 3 times. Vengeance is mine, says the Lord, I will repay. Oh, what I call justice was revenge. And what's the difference? Love. So when someone's hurt you, of course you should get justice. But if you don't care about that person at all, then you really would just want to hurt and break them. But if you love them, you're still going to be hurt and angry, but you want whatever's corrective that's best for them. Because that's love. And that's how you get justice. And I said, Jesus, forgive me. I didn't know what I was doing. I was after revenge, really. I give it up. Forgive me. And it was like a supernatural operation. It was like 2,000 pounds were cut off my shoulders. Now, that's me. I know that was real. And I thought, when's the last time I know Jesus is real? Then. because that would have been crippling. I wouldn't even known it was crippling, but it would have been crippling. And so for me, I cannot do this without Jesus' help. At the same time, we welcome people from, like, as I said, we have atheists, agnostics, Buddhists, Muslims, spirit worshipers, and all kinds. Yazidis are on our team. And if just do this for love. If you can't do it for love, then no matter what you call yourself, it's not going to work. And in terms of funding, we don't get funding from the US government. We would love it. I'd take it all they want to give. But the funding we get is mostly from individuals and churches around the world, mostly in America, but also other countries.
So sounds good. One other question: when you talk about the government doesn't fund you guys. The government doesn't necessarily take a position. If I can ask, what's the legality here? The structure? Does the U.S. government have any say in where you operate? I mean, you mentioned the Kurdish government had to give their yes to you guys coming in. Who has to make that call? Does Iraq have to say they can come in, and America have to allow you to, or do you operate as freely as possible?
Well, thank God America's a free country. And you can go overseas and do whatever you want unless you're committing crimes. And then you actually are responsible to the country that you're committing crimes in. And actually not generally to America, although there are some exceptions. And by American law, for example, you could go to war. You can't go to war with an ally of America. And that's against the law. But if you wanted to volunteer and go fight ISIS in Syria as an American, you could do that right now. It's not against the law. You don't need America's permission. And our job is not to go fight anyone. Our job is to go give humanitarian assistance. And we, like anyone else who wants to do that, you don't need to ask America's permission to do that. You just go do it. But you're going to end up in another country. And at some point, you're going to need their permission. Once they figure out what you're doing, you're going to need their permission. I don't just want their permission. I want to be in a friendship with them. It's their country. It's not mine. I want to help. And so like when I show up with the Iraqi army, I mean, the way it happened with the Iraqis, we were already with the Kurds and we got to know them. And of course, when they first meet you, they're like, who are you guys, you know? And I remember when they first met us, the Kurds first met us, my son was there and he goes, oh, you brought your son, your most precious thing. I give you my most precious thing, my country. I trust you. Wow. Okay. I told him what we do. I was trying to talk that we're professional. We have good doctors and medics where we can be of service. And I was telling him all this, and I thought I made an okay impression, and they were going to use us somewhere in the front line. And as I got ready to walk out, I just felt God in my spirit say, pray. Oh yeah. Okay. And I said to the Kurdish general, can we pray? And he goes, of course, we're Muslims. We believe in God. He said, Americans believe in God? I said, yes, a lot of us do. He goes, oh, that's good. We thought you didn't believe anymore. I said, I believe, and a lot of Americans do. And I said, all this gear out here that we brought, medical supplies, trucks, that's paid by Christians. They believe. And then I felt God say, get on your knees. I was like, get on my knees. I'm talking to God, like, in my mind, get on my knees. I'll look like a Christian nutcase. Get on my knees. And I felt God say in my spirit, are you afraid of me or these guys? I'm like, well, I'm afraid of you a lot more than I am of people. I respect your God. We're just people. And I got on my knees and I prayed. I felt like an idiot, but I just thought, no, I'm going to surrender to God. And I just prayed on my knees. And then I felt peace. When I stood up, the Kurdish general, through a translator, shook my hand. He said, I have no idea what you said, but I saw what you did. You respect God like we do. You have our trust. And then when I met the Iraqi army later, we were asked by a big NGO to deliver food in the lines because the NGOs couldn't do it because of the heavy fighting, and we could. We had no rules against that. And when I first met the Iraqi general, what I said was, I'm under your authority. I've got 2 armored vehicles, 4 thin skins, 2 ambulances. My family's over here. They're not going to be in the fighting. They're going to be back taking care of kids. I have these 3 really good medics here. They're all here. I got $100,000 cash. I mean, that's really what I have. And together we got to figure out how to spend it. I'm not holding nothing back. It's all yours. And that's how we operate.
It's remarkable because when you look at this kind of tempo and what you're doing, and by the way, your family's in tow. When you say that, we're not talking about a bunch of rugged football players. These are kids with you and your wife. They're really there with you. It's remarkable. You guys should definitely watch the movie. I've got the ad. Just type in Free Burma Rangers mood documentary and you'll find it. Buy the movie because that's a good way to support these guys and you'll see what they do. But you have your kids there. And I wanted to make a note on on faith too. You're dropping to your knees in an Islamic world. Their religion is based on surrender. Ours is based on faith. They're based on surrender. When they see you go to your knees, I mean, if that's not God guiding you to cross-culturally communicate, I don't know what it is, right? It's remarkable that you constantly say, and then I prayed, and you're looking for counsel from your spirit. And if nothing else, if someone wants to be atheist, whatever, you're slowing down to be their better version of you. The more evolved version has the second or third response. There's plenty of atrocity of you seen where you should lose your mind and just want to go on a rampage and kill these people. Can you talk a little bit about the ethnic violence and what sorts out, who's in and who's out, who's dead, who's alive, who gets punished and who doesn't, and what does that equal on the ground? Because the ground truth and what we know that Burma sometimes is called Myanmar. Maybe there's some red things or rouge. I don't know. Anyhow, there's all this stuff we don't know, but the reality of the atrocity, the ethnic problems. Talk about that.
Well, I appreciate what you just said. I had not thought about that cross-cultural part. That's a great insight. And because I've never been in the Muslim world before the whole Battle of Mosul. I knew nothing. In fact, the first time I went to Iraq and Kurdistan, I said, God, what would I do here? I speak some Asian languages. I grew up there. We're in the jungle. We're actually not very good. We're like the fifth string, but in the jungle, there's no other strings. Now I'm in the desert. That's not the jungle. I'm in a modern world because they are modern. Like, what good could we do? I don't speak Arabic or Kurdish, and I'm new to Islam. So God helped me a lot. And I love these people. I really saw the courage of the Iraqis. And you were asking about Burma. So Burma is a country of 70 years of civil war between the Burman majority, which is about 60% of the population, and then a multitude of other ethnic groups, which comprise about 40%. But after England relinquished Burma as a colony after World War II, it went right into civil war. The Burmans trying to dominate the ethnics, which has been going on before the British came. And it's has been a long war, thousands of years, actually. And so it hasn't stopped because there's never been a real democracy in Burma. And there was an attempt at one starting in 2015, led by a woman named Aung San Suu Kyi, who's a leader of democracy movement in Burma. She won a Nobel Peace Prize. She's now arrested again. And then as she gained a little bit too much more power to the military's like, on February the 1st this year, 2021, they did a coup, removed her, and arrested hundreds of her party, and the military took complete overt control. They really already had control. They took overt control, and then they've killed almost 900 people in the streets, men, women, and children right now, and 200,000 ethnic people where I'm at in the mountains are displaced, hiding in the jungle, 200,000. Now, over the years, over 1 million have been displaced, but right now, just this last few months, 200,000. So they did airstrikes against us and shoot and kill people. But it's not over. The people haven't given up. The people in the cities haven't given up. And there's a new unity between the ethnic Burmans who don't like the government and the ethnic minority people. And we're in the middle of that. So we're doing three things. We are giving humanitarian relief to the ethnics in the mountains. We're helping some of the people in the cities escape. We're part of the network of that. And we're also helping train some people in the cities in medical and information and communication. And that's what we're in. But in terms of what the Burma Army does, they do some of the same atrocities as ISIS did, as the Nazis did, murdering, raping, torturing. But it's important to know the distinction, I think, between ISIS and the Burma Army. They're not the same. The Burma military is like a big mafia. In other words, they don't just go out to kill just to kill. They don't have any religious idea. They just want to control the power. They're greedy. They're afraid of anything that threatens them, and they'll kill you if you get in their way. But they don't have any ideology, unlike ISIS. And so it's like a mafia, slow, low-intensity conflict, 70 years now, and just keeps going on.
Yeah, the conflict in Burma and then that entire region of Southeast Asia, to some extent, has been going on for quite a while. One question that I have as a political scientist is, we see a great deal of kind of stoking of ethnic tensions in the United States right now. What lesson does the rest of the world have for us about the potential dangers of doing this from your perspective in this kind of conflict zone?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And Lord Jesus, help me answer it and all the questions in your way. And bless these men that are running this show tonight. In your name, amen. And any listener too. Well, I the first, as you said that, the first thought I had was tribalism. And there's some good things about being in a tribe. You're born into one. You don't earn it. It's a gift. You're part of it. You're accepted. There's some bad things about that, though, too. And because it can be like, okay, whatever happens within the tribe stays in the tribe. And whatever the tribe does wrong, no one else can punish it. And so one great thing about America, I remember reading about a guy named Chamberlain, and he was a Union officer. I'm a Southerner. I was born in Texas, grew up overseas. I'm definitely a Southerner. And I have ancestors who fought in the Confederacy. In fact, one of them was Governor Easley, who fired the governor of South Carolina, first one to secede, that fired on Fort Sumter. We were on the wrong side, but that was my heritage. But it wasn't all just about slavery. It was also about the idea of states' rights and individual freedoms, which obviously are not going to work because they wouldn't give blacks individual freedom. So we were wrong. Anyway, that was my background. And I remember reading about a Union general named Chamberlain. And he was a very devout Christian, and he joined the war. In fact, he got the Medal of Honor, the Battle of Gettysburg on Little Round Top, because his main unit held the line when everybody was crumbling. When they asked him, why did you fight in the war? You got to fight your own brothers, man. You're fighting Americans. He said, I fought for this reason. In Europe, it matters what your last name is. In America, it doesn't matter what your last name is. It doesn't matter who your father was. And that's the exact opposite of tribalism. America is a country. On one side, my heritage goes back to the Pilgrims. And on the other side, it goes back to recently, just a few, less than 100 years ago, to the Czechs who fled oppression and came to America. And I remember my grandmother, who could easily have spoke fluent Czech and everything else, decided not to. Not because she was ashamed, because she wants to be an American. And American first, Czech second. That's what made America work, is that we came together and realized we're all equal value. We all have different backgrounds. We all have diversity. We all have different ways of expression that we should be able to keep and use. But those are second to working and living together. Those are second. We're new people now. We're not better, but we're new. And whether I'm black, white, brown, from whatever country in the world, our country and our Constitution gives us the same unalienable rights. And we've had to fight for those. We've made a lot of mistakes, and it's a constant work. But the moment we say, no, it's my group against your group, well, then we're like every other tribe in the world. It feels good, in your little circle, but it doesn't work. The whole society will break down. And so I think we have to look at each other just like a family looks at each other. When you look around at your mom and dad and brothers and sisters, you can't say, oh, you can say, but it's unrealistic. You shouldn't be part of my sister. You shouldn't be my sister. You shouldn't be a brother. You shouldn't be my dad. No, you don't have a choice in that. No one voted to be that. You were born into it. And we Americans, born into it or immigrated, we have to look at every American, whether they're Democratic, Republican, something in the middle, no matter even what their morality is, and have to say, I love you and respect you. You don't have to agree at all. In fact, sometimes you'll have to disagree, but you have to love and respect, just like a family, because we are a family. And so a family that can love and respect each other will have disagreements. There's always going to be a struggle for moral righteousness. And it's hard for any of us, because all of us are fallen, to know what that is. But it is a struggle we have to take, not as enemies, as a family.
When we look at ethnic conflict, one of the things that we have to understand that we lose sight of here in America is, first off, you're in Iraq. You mentioned the Kurds, the Syrians, the Yazidis, and the Iraqis, all dramatically different ethnicities. In some cases where even we could see and be like, that's a different person than that person. We tend to think of everything as black people and the white people. You go to Burma, and there's got to be dozens of ethnicities. Have you help us understand that, and what ethnicity is, where it's invisible to me? If I looked at someone I wouldn't even know someone who was Burmese versus Laotian, even, right? But you go into those hills around Burma, and there's all kinds, this ocean of different kinds of people. Talk a little bit about that, and then have you been able to sort out? Because I know, when I was in Iraq, we'd come into a meeting and they'd say that person's this tribe, that person's this religion, and they could see it by the way they buttoned their collar, by the way they walked. There was a certain gait that one guy said. Those guys are all traitors like not like, nefarious traders, but like I trade in goods, that kind of trader. They could see it the moment they looked at them. Talk a little bit about ethnicity. And again, if you can't compare it back to the United States, where we look at white, black, and that's it. Where Asia is this massive country where you could be in Oman or Timor-Leste or anywhere in between and see 5,000 different ethnicities.
Yeah. And I think the first thing I'd like to say about that is racism is alive and unwell and an evil all over the world. And it's not limited to black and white. In fact, black and white is not an issue where I'm at. There's brown and brown. And the brown people from this tribe hate the brown people from that tribe. And you saw it in the Middle East. These are Arabs fighting and hating Arabs. So it's a false line to say, oh, this racism is between this color and that color. No. If you look at Burma, there's over 100 tribes. Many of them do not like each other. When you look at the main Burman population, the dictators attacking the ethnics, they're both brown skin. They hate each other. So I like what Alexander Solzhenitsyn said. He was the Russian dissident who spent a long time in the gulags in communist Russia. And he said, the line of good and evil is not between nations, groups, races, and people. It's in the human heart. It's in the human heart. And he went on to say, in the worst evil, most evil person, there's always still a shred of good and an opportunity for more. And in the best person, there's a shred of evil and the opportunity for more evil. That's human. And so here in Burma, you're right. We have all these tribes and they're all basically brown, so to speak. But that doesn't mean they like each other. It's a constant work. And then if you look within a tribe, there's factions within a tribe that may not like each other. So this is a human problem in our own hearts. Each heart has this problem that we have to, for me, Jesus is the only one that can fix that in me. I'm too blind to some things. Some things I obviously am not racist about at all because I grew up with these people, but maybe a new people, I will be like, oh, who are these guys? That's my own weakness. But when I say, Jesus, help me see everyone as your children, he helps me. So here in Burma, we see that very clearly, that the line of good and evil is in the human heart, because it's not about color here. It's the same colors hate the same colors, but there are different. And like you said, you've had a lot of experience in Iraq, and I'm learning there now. Yeah. Oh yeah. That guy, because of his name, he's a Sunni. Because of the way he said this, he's a Shia. Because of this many prayers, he's that. And in Asia, I can tell because I grew up here, the difference between a Lahu and a Karen, a Shan and a Aka and a Thai and a Burman, I can tell like 90% of the time. And so can they. But, to us, when they look at us foreigners, I think we all look the same.
Yeah, one of the problems with race as the answer is it's an emotional answer, and the culture starts to break down, and there's a lot of, and this is what I learned in Iraq and Afghanistan working there. It's sitting because, like you, David, I got to go out front, right? So I would go out with patrols, and I would interact with the locals and try to understand and bring that reality back to the commander, right? And I would, try to understand like who they are, why they make the decisions they do, and not to judge what they were, because again, there before the grace of God, wow, would I make a different decision in these conflict zones? I highly doubt it. It would be arrogant for me to think that I would live differently. And so when you can sit in that space, you can understand that in this society, men and young boys have sex. I don't dig it, but it is the reality of where we are. And we can't change that because it is not our job to change that. If we're going to change anything, how do we create stability? And one of the things that I've always struggled with, because we're so desperate as Americans to provide the help and we have all the answers, but you know as well as I do, I know this is already true. You guys do not have the answers. You have to go there. You have to talk to that Iraqi general. You have to build trust. And when they're like, oh, if we only had $10,000, we could solve this one problem. Or if we only had, and you're like, well, I have that tool, but you can't give that tool because you don't know what to do until they tell you, like, this is and I know you'll appreciate this. I would say to the person I was talking to, what is the simplest thing that we could just solve right now that is out of your capacity? And it was simple stuff. Like if your commander could move that cement wall right there 3 feet, my kids could go to school right across the street from that. I will not let them walk to the end of the wall, which is a mile down there, because I can't see what they're doing. And so we could get kids in school by snapping our fingers and making concrete move. Now they couldn't move it. It was too big, but battalion commander, get that forklift out here. I want it out here now. Why aren't you done yet? and then bam, it solves that problem, and you create that one little spark of community. I'm going to shut up and let you talk now.
I love that story. I love your commander, and thank God for you as well, and your love and your attitude. You're a great American ambassador, and I think that's right. And I'm going to copy you. What's the one thing we can do? What's the first thing we can do that can help? And for me, when I look at, I'm not sure this was your question or where you were going, but I think about there's kind of three ways of helping people, or three results, or three methods of development. One is you introduce something that they've already tried, it'll never work, and they're way ahead of you, and you're going to waste your money trying. And that's like number one. Happens a lot. We think they're going to need this, we're going to do this. It will never work. They've already tried it. It will never happen. The second one is it works, but they don't care that much about it. And so the only way it's going to be sustained is if you do it. Now, if it's important enough to you, you'll do it, but they're not going to do it. And then the last one is the one we're all looking for is what's that one thing we can do to get you could carry on after we're gone. And those are rare because they're not stupid. They've been there their whole lives. They've figured most things out, just like we have. But when you find something that they latch onto and improve, then they're not dependent on you anymore. And so in our role, whenever we go somewhere, we will make mistakes trying to help something that just can't be helped or is wrong to help. And then some things we'll be stuck with, realizing, we got to keep doing this. And other things they'll say, oh, that's what that is. Okay, I got it. We can even do it better. And that's the best one. So that's what we try to do as well.
When watching the movie, and everybody should watch that movie, it's so powerful. And thank you guys for the work that you do. No one can thank you guys enough, because one of the impressions that you get, and again, from my experience in conflict zones, if not you, who's going to go do this, right? I mean, I'm sure if I was to ask you the question, and you can fill this in later on if you want to, but how big could we make your organization before you ran out of stuff to go do? And I mean the grittiest, hardest, frontlinest, like you guys put your hands on people that have been shot, they've been mortared, and you're helping to ease their wounds in the most rudimentary way. This is not like a hospital. You guys are laying people on a banana leaf and then working on them to get a bullet out of their body, whatever it is. So I'm sure we could make you guys double the size or triple the size, and you still wouldn't be able to get to all the conflict that's needed out there. But the other thing is when you see the atrocities, I don't want to make this a gruesome show, but talk a little bit about the level of hate and misery that's put on people, because I don't think that we can capture that. We go to Starbucks, and if our order isn't done in time, we need an app to order coffee, for crying out loud. Talk a little bit about that. And then if you can remember this part, I'll remind you. If not, and then let's slide into the IDP problem, the internally displaced people, for the audience. And what does it mean to be IDP, where you leave your house, you leave your village running, and maybe you have time to stick a bunch of stuff in a backpack or whatever, but you're on foot and your entire life is now gone, and you may never go back to your house. This isn't something like, they'll be back home in a few years. No, that may never happen and probably won't. So talk a little bit about those things, if you would, please, David.
Yeah, I'll start with the IDPs, internally displaced people. So that over 1 million people have been displaced inside Burma since 1997, 200,000 right now. And it means different things to different people. But what it means for everybody is they've got to go now. If they stay in their house, they can get arrested or shot. And I remember, talking to two kids that fled, and I said, what happened? And they said, the Burma Army came at our village shooting. Everybody ran away, but my parents didn't make it out of the house in time. We jumped behind the trees on the side of the house, and the Burma Army caught my parents. And these are kids. These are 7 and 10-year-olds. And we're watching, they said, and they put my mom and dad's head in the rice pounder. A rice pounder is not as big as a 55-gallon drum, but like imagine a big bucket made of a carved out, hollowed out piece of wood about the size of 2 big buckets. And then they pour the unhusked rice in, and then there's a huge teak lever with a big hammer on the end of it. And you stand on the back, and and as a lever, and it goes bang, bang, and it pounds. It drops about 150, 200 pounds of wood, like a hammer on that rice and breaks the husk off. They put the mom and dad's head in there and then stepped and pounded until they mashed the heads in. And the kids watched this and hid in the trees thinking they're next. And then they finally escaped. But when the Burma army goes through a village often, then they'll loot whatever they can and they'll burn the whole village. And then once it's been burned, they'll put landmines around in case anybody ever wanted to come back to terrorize them. So then the people who don't come back or have fled, they've fled over, let's say, 2 mountains. Maybe they're only 10 miles straight line, but they've walked like 30 to get there. And they think they're kind of safe. They're in a little valley. There's a little trickle of a stream. They've carried grandmother who had a stroke, and you've got to carry her now. And she was comfortable in her house, but now you got to carry her in the jungle. They got mom who's got malaria and dad who was shot on the way out, and he's bleeding and with a broken leg, and he's hobbling along. And you get down, there's like 200 people from this village in this narrow little stream of thick jungle, and you dare not clear too much in case someone sees you, and you're drinking out of the same place. Then it starts to rain. You don't have a shelter. You have to quickly try to make a shelter. Hope you have the right leaves. Babies are crying. There's not enough food. Only whatever you could carry on your back. And there's no 911 to call. There's no police to call. There's no Supreme Court to go to. There's no National Guard to come help you. There's no Delta Force, Navy SEALs, U.S. Army Rangers going to come save you. No, man, they got to hunt you down and kill you. And you're like, God, where am I? Do I count? What happened to this world? I was trying to follow you and you let these evil people. I think that's how people feel. I felt that. And that's the life of a displaced person. And then if they survive there, they'll wait until they'll go back maybe a few weeks and go, is the Burma Army still around our camp? I'm in our village. And if the Burma Army builds a camp in the village, you can never go back. I was just at a village where the Burma Army built a camp about 1 kilometer away, a little less than a mile away from the village. And the people who lived below that camp could no longer live there. They get shot. And then we were out trying to plant rice. This lady came to plant rice, and some of the rice fields were visible from the Burma Army camp. So the Burma Army would shoot at people in the rice fields. They shot at this old widow running around with a machine gun. They're shooting at her, and almost kill her. This happened 4 or 5 days ago. And I heard her story. I heard the shooting, actually, and she came to us, and I heard the story. My wife and kids are doing a kids program in the village. And I said, I looked, and it started to rain. And I said, look, it's raining. The clouds have come down. We'll help you plant your rice. She said, no, they're going to kill you. I said, well, there's no other rice field for you, is there? She says, no, this is the only way we can get food. We got to plant this year, and we'll help you. And we prayed together, and we went out, and my family, my team stayed in the woods with a widow, because I didn't know what would happen. I said, let just 5 of us go out first and see if we can start planting under the guns of the Burma Army. They won't see us because of this rain and mist. And then if it works, you guys come out and join me. And we went out there, and just when we got to the rice field, the rain stopped, the clouds lifted, and there's the Burma Army. They opened up on us. Machine guns, rifle, bang, 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 bang. We almost got shot. Everybody, even my wife and kids, had to jump down into this little stream bed. Bullets everywhere. And then they stopped shooting, but they couldn't see us. And we prayed, what are we going to do? We can't go out there. We're going to get killed. We can't just leave. So we prayed. I crawled out, and as slow as I could, with a kind of camouflage tarp thing over me, like a poncho, and trying to look like a big clump of dirt, and planted just a little bit. That's all I could get away with, and came back and thought, wow, man, this is a horrible life. It's tough. So we gave that widow enough money to buy rice from another village for a year, and we prayed with her. But found out, then we had to go to another village. We found out later that night, she said she took courage from that. And she had her neighbors together, and they went out at night with no lights in the rain, and they planted that whole field under the Burma Army camp, and then they crept back. And so now for the Burma Army to destroy that crop, they got to come down to do that, which is not easy because the villagers will shoot them. Even though they'll probably lose, the Burma Army will lose some people, and they don't care to die for oppressing villagers. So that's the life of an IDP. Very tenuous. And school, how are you going to go to school? And what's your future? I remember in an area of Karen State, I was in Duplia District, 6th Brigade, we call it Central Karen State. Before the 1997 offensive the Burma Army did, there were huge teak houses, huge schools. No paved roads, all dirt, but pretty nice places. Every single one of those was burned. All the family heirlooms destroyed. Animals slaughtered. Got to start all over again. So these are things that the displaced people face in terms of what we've seen. Yeah, we've seen a lot of horrible injuries and dead. I think some of the worst hurts in Iraq, watching, seeing, I didn't watch it happen. I came there right afterwards. A woman is dead next to a wheelchair. Her husband is slumped over dead in the wheelchair. And I looked around. There's 4 wheelchairs with guys dead in them or women dead in them, and their spouses trying to push. They're also dead. And this is a street. It's in actually, some of this is in the documentary, that we ended up rescuing this little girl on the same street, the only living kid at the end of it. They killed 150 people. And I remember looking at, there was a baby laying down in swaddling clothes, like a month old, a bullet hole through her head. And the mom looked like she was 19, sprawled out behind her, also a bullet hole in her head. They shot one, then the other. I've had dads come to me with a kid shot in the head saying, "Can you save my kid? Can you save my kid? He's already dead." Of course, I try to help. I just cry. We can't. Been dead. So these are horrible things we see. But, in the midst of that, I like this saying because it's true. When a sorrow is shared, it's divided. When a joy is shared, it's multiplied. And I remember in Syria, when one of my closest friends, a Kachin tribesman from Burma named Zhao Sang, was killed right next to me by the Turkish military, which is a whole other story. They were supporting the jihadis in the invasion of northern Syria, which is a tragedy. Anyways, he was a cameraman. He was killed next to me. We worked on him in the hospital, in the Kurdish hospital, and couldn't save him. Hour and a half we worked on his heart, electric shocks, adrenaline, everything you do in an American hospital. And finally, the Kurdish surgeon, who was a Muslim, put his hand on my arm and said, "Is it enough?" And I said, "He's dead, isn't he?" He said, "Yes, he's dead. He's been dead since you brought him in. But we worked on him because we love you and we loved him." And, I started to cry, and we all cried, but we cried together. And then when we did the funeral for Zhao Sang in Kurdistan, 3,000 women came out crying for him. They didn't know him, but they know who he was. He was a young man from Burma that came and was willing to give his life for them. He didn't want to die, but he's willing to risk it for them. And they were crying for this guy. And I remember just feeling sad, but my burden was lifted a bit. And that's what happens, I think, with all of us, in America as well. When someone's happy, join them. When someone does something great, praise them. When they're crying, cry with them. This is what it means to be human, really human.
Again, from my time and my experience, I'm drawing from this, but we're working in conflict zones, so it's the same kind of thing. And my job was largely non-lethal, even though I had weapons and I had a platoon, if not bigger, with me. My job was to interact with people and figure out what was going on so we could do a better job. When you're out there, not every day is combat. There's a lot of beauty. There's a lot of joy in these things. I know I did, when I was a kid, we went to Merida, Mexico, and visited with a long time, probably still there in some regard, missionary family. And then we went out to the further out into the Yucatan to a place called Quimbala, and we did some missionary work as a kid. It spent like 3 weeks, the whole summer when you're a kid, but it was 3 weeks, the 3 precious weeks, and I learned so much from that time about being in service of other people. But when I think about the need to go out and interact with people at their level, just to see what they're going through, so you can understand where the help is. Again, preconceived notions. A plan is, look, you're precious with your plan, but you don't know until you get there. You must have so many circumstances where you've encountered someone you never would have met otherwise. You just go out and you start acting. You start doing what is obvious, even if, again, it's the smallest little simple thing. But how do you know what to do next? How do you train your people on surrendering a lot of this stuff to Providence and saying, we're going to go here, we're going to be helpful, and that's what we're going to do. We don't know what that means. I can't pre-brief you on this because I'm not there, right? I mean, I know, like, I had a basic mission set, basic question set, but I had 15 question sets that I would ask. Maybe I'm talking to a farmer. Maybe he wants to talk about politics. Maybe and I've got to transition all, that's my spy work, right? That's what I do and go out and do. But talk a little bit about, how do you know what to do. And how much pre-planning can you actually do? Maybe my technique is totally wrong. Maybe yours is better. Like, oh no, we got a whole PowerPoint. It always works this way.
Well, first, thanks for your service.
Oh,
What an
thank you.
awesome soldier you were and still are. And I wish there was many more people like you. And I'm sure they miss you in Iraq. And you probably saved many lives just because they like you.
Hmm.
And I think that's really the key. You know, sometimes we're tired or busy or proud or angry or whatever. And we don't want to like somebody. You want to use them. We're never told use people, but that's what it comes down. I remember one guy briefed me. I said, what's your job? My job is to go in first and find out who I can leverage and how I can shape the environment. I thought, that's just using people. And people are not stupid. They're going to figure that out really fast. Why don't you just say, my job is to make friends? Because, if the guy will be your friend and shoots you, you can shoot him. You can always kill him. That's not a problem.
Right.
You always got that in your back. You can kill somebody. Especially you're in an American army, you're in conflict, you're allowed to do that. But that's not your main job, man. Make friends. Because once someone's your friend, not only will they do those things that you asked for, they're going to do things you didn't even know to ask for. But if they're not your friend, you'd have to pay them a lot to do a couple of those things, probably poorly. And they'll never tell you that right around this corner is something even better. They'll never tell you because they don't like you because you don't like them. And so I think it's incumbent on the visitor to say, okay, I care about you. And I just have to ask for love. I don't have it always in me at all. God, help me love. Help me look at this person like a real and care about where they're at. That helps me a lot. And there's a tendency inside me to want to brush that off, get to the point, get the job done, no time for this other stuff. But I found it's much more efficient in time to make friends first. You'll get so much more done. And you can't make friends unless you have love. You got to really want to like them. And I remember, I thought God taught me this where I was going through a difficult country for a mission. Well, it was China. Not easy country to go do some things in that we needed to do. And I was so focused on my mission, get over here, that when I landed at the airport, I suddenly realized, Dave, that immigration officer is also your mission. Really. God's bigger than all this. If he wants to get it done, he's going to get it done. So don't treat people like obstacles or tools or whatever. Treat them like people. And I remember I just stopped and looked at the guy in the eye and smiled. And most of the time, you have a new little friend right there. And it never slowed or hindered my work at all. So I think that's really the key is try to make friends. And, some people just won't be your friend. I've had that as well. I've had shoot at me, the whole thing. But I remember one story. I can't remember if it's in the documentary or not. I wrote a book. It's in the book. The book is called Do This for Love, Free Burma Rangers in the Battle of Mosul. It's in the book. But it was right after the we were in Kurdistan 2016 before the Battle of Mosul, but it was the beginning of the offensive against ISIS, the counteroffensive to push them out. This was October 23rd, I think, 2016. And the coalition was fighting strikes. The Kurds were attacking. We were in a place called Faisalia outside a town called Bashika, which is east of Mosul, and liberated it. And ISIS were killed and the people were cheering. But one of the airstrikes had killed a group of ISIS, but the next bomb had killed an entire family by accident, total accident. And the U.S. did phenomenally great work being careful. I mean, people who criticize the U.S. have no idea how much care people had, and emotionally they cared about not hurting civilians. And so much so that sometimes we were pinned down by heavy fire and we couldn't get an airstrike because the American commander didn't want to kill one civilian. It was very impressive. But accidents happen, especially when ISIS puts themselves right next to a family, which was this case. This whole family of 8's killed. But when your family's killed, they're killed. Doesn't matter how. They're dead. And there was a group of men, about 200 men, with these 8 dead bodies, and they were mourning. And my translator, I said, "What's that?" And he told me. I said, "Oh." And he said, "Don't go there, Dave. This time I was an American with the Kurds. There weren't any American soldiers there. You're an American. They're going to kill you." And I remember thinking, yeah, it might be disrespectful for me as an American to go there. Then I stopped and I prayed and I thought, no, you're an ambassador for Jesus. You go.
That's right.
You're also now an ambassador for America. You're an American. You're responsible, at least indirectly. So I prayed. I had an AK-47 and magazines. I had a pistol. I took everything off, my hand grenades. I took everything off, gave them to one of my guys, and then asked my translator to come to me. I took the pistol. I stuck it down my waistband under my shirt where you couldn't see it behind my back because I'm a chicken. And I walked up to this crowd of people and they looked at me with just hate, and they could see I was an American instantly. And I began to apologize. I said, I bet that pilot had no idea. He probably has kids. And if he knew he killed his family, he'd be sick in his heart. I mean, I'm sorry. I know it's a mistake. And Americans, we're going to help you. And I kept saying, I'm sorry. And they just looked at me, full of sorrow and bitterness and anger. And nothing changed. And I just prayed, what do I do, God? And I got on my knees again. And I raised my hands in the air and I said, I'm really sorry. The only thing more I can give you is my life. I have no time to ask my wife and my 3 kids for their permission for me to give my life away. I can't, but I'm going to give it to you. It's not worth those 8 lives. It's only 1. But I've got a Glock behind my waistband. You can pull it out and shoot me. I will not resist. That's all I can give. That's all I can give you. And all of a sudden I felt these 2 strong hands pick me up. This huge Iraqi picked me up and hugged me crying. He was the brother of the family that died. And he said, we don't hate you. We're not going to kill you. I started to cry. And the whole attitude changed. And the sorrow was still there. But they knew we were sorry and we were brothers. And we ended up getting money to help the family. And we're being able to report that directly to the U.S. government, which very quickly responded and paid, which again doesn't bring the kids back, but it's the best they could do to admit the mistake and pay. And then we put a playground there later on in honor of those kids. That didn't bring the family back, but this is real life. This is the best we could do.
And when you've got conflict zones, things like this will happen. There will be collateral damage. You can be desperate to try to stop it. But to our credit and our partners' credits, Great Britain, Canada, Australia, all the countries on our side of things, we're the only ones that are going to send you some money and try to do some kind of compensation. I promise if ISIS kills your family on accident, they don't give a damn. They just don't care. And that's the same thing true anywhere where there's conflict. So these things, it is a byproduct of it. Another thing I wanted to say, and you said this earlier, was you talked about you worked with an Iraqi colonel. And one of the things I learned was the 2 most powerful words with your partner, wherever you're at, is like, especially in Iraq, is Naam Saidi. Yes, sir. Basically, you're a colonel and you're talking to an Iraqi general. You are subordinate to that person as a partner. You are the person who's trying to instigate change. And they look at you and they go, Colonel, you just say exactly like you would say to your boss in the States. Yes, sir. I'll get it done. And the thing is those things, when you've built that trust, when you understand their problems, they're not going to ask for the world. Will there be some corruption? Of course, there's not enough stuff there. Any money that comes in is going to get funneled out to deal with something, right? There are so many problems. You just can't be precious with money. I'm not saying you waste it, but you don't control where the need is. And I promise the person who gets it is going to need it. And they're going to need more than what you got. So that's one thing to say. But usually most of the things that I saw that were solved were small things. And when we were at our best with the Army, which wasn't very often, we would look at the governor, we would look at the general and say, like, what is your plan? The full plan. And then how do we do as little as possible to help you? And when you need our help, it's specific help. And again, it's not multi-millions of dollars. It's, can you bring water here? Again, another story from Afghanistan. We had farmers and they were talking about, like, what's the simplest thing we can do today? And they're like, what's a problem? And we could use help with, and they're talking to their governor now, which is remarkable because they don't normally do that. They're like, we have a rutted road. We're trying to bring our crop in. And if we could just get that road fixed, that'd be a win for the government and we would love it. And so the governor looks at the Army captain and says, you need to fix that rutted road with your front loader that we had. We had a front loader out in the middle of nowhere, like on a mountain. And we went out and we did that. And then when I went back out to the villages days and weeks later, I would say, what was the last thing the government did here? They're like, oh, they fixed the road. It was awesome. And so we created a spark of peace and of calm. You got to do that all the time. And the other thing I want to talk about real quick was security and safety and stability are things that we take for granted. They're not the norm in the world. I've seen too much of that. They're always better at instability than us. And then the things that we want to get girls in school. You are on problem 5,000. Here, they're trying to stay alive. They can't even live in their village. They don't want to send their kids out into unknown areas because there's mines and dangers and threat. And so I learned there, and you probably have more. There's 3 kinds of security that an Afghan man was worried about. Can I go to and from work? Because if I can leave my home and go to work safely, then I'm worried about, is my home safe when I'm gone? And then if that is safe, then I can send my kids out to school away from the home and back. But if you couldn't meet those 3 elements of safety and security, it didn't matter what you wanted to do, didn't matter what briefed well. That was where the work was in that safety and security. And in a place that doesn't have stability, it's too easy as an American to let your ego get in the way and try to solve these big problems, when in reality, you're just trying to help people feel safe. And then the other thing I wanted to say, and now I'll shut up, is that the specter of the problem is always 5 times bigger than the actual problem itself. Now, I'm not saying the Burma Army doesn't kill people, but people get terrified, and it's very hard to get them to move towards a solution because they have been taught to fear for their lives. They've been taught that their friends and family are going to get killed. And even when it does calm down, it's not calm to them because there's too much damage there. You've got to spend a lot of time caring for that person, and they don't trust easily. And the last thing I'm going to say is, one of the proudest moments of my military career was when I was a civilian, but I was working with the military. The Taliban said, "Hey, we want to see this Pete guy," and my partner Rich, and they wanted to meet us to understand who we were because we were having a lot of impact in the valley. And so the Afghans threw a party we didn't know we were going to, and the Taliban were there, but they saw us and they respected us because we weren't talking about threat. We were talking about Afghans and how do we do things their way and what can we understand? And they're like, those guys are fine. They can operate through this valley with no problem. You can always meet with them. And that, David, is, as you know, remarkable to get the enemy to say you can operate here because what you're doing, we support. And yeah, that's a lot of stuff. I figured we'd give you stuff to freestyle off of. And again, thank you so much for coming on the show. Talk for as long as you want on those points.
Well, first, I'd like to say you're a wise man. And I love what you said about that's problem number 5,000. And you're like, oh, yeah. And those 3 things, can I go to work or go out to my field? Is my house safe behind me? And is my kids and wife safe to go to school or shopping or whatever? And right, if we can't solve those, everything else is actually at that point a joke, and we lose all credibility. And we're not relevant to their situation. So, and that's the same on the Texas frontier in the 1800s. You can bring in all the social programs you want, but if the homestead's going to get massacred, that doesn't really matter. So I think I was thinking of what you said. Even the Taliban allowed you to stay there. Someone could say, oh, what are you doing with the Taliban for? Well, man, this is not a sports game between the Dallas Cowboys and the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is humans trying to figure out how to live together. And your enemy can become your friend, or at least not your complete enemy sometimes. I remember what Abraham Lincoln said when he invited someone over and his chief of staff said, that's your political enemy. He said, well, how much better it would be if he was my friend. And the only way to start is to have him for dinner. So, and some people won't do that. You've got to fight them. That's true. You sometimes have to stop the human heart with a bullet, but you'll never change the human heart with a bullet. That's only love. And so what you all did in that valley, they could see was love. They could see that, and they know what love is. And thank God that Taliban commander had some in him. Some won't have any love left, but he did. So I think also something you said, and we face it here just the other day, trying to help this lady plant rice. We didn't have mortars to suppress the Burma army so she could plant rice. We didn't have weapons enough and troops enough to take out that camp and remove that problem from her. Both of those are frustrating. It's like, man, what can you do then? Well, we can do this. We had money to buy her rice from somewhere else so she can survive. And we could go out with her and try to help plant. That's all we could do. And I think in life, sometimes we're looking for that big home run. We're going to do this big thing. Most of life is not like that. When it happens, awesome. Most of life is to be faithful about the small things in front of you. And, I was thinking about that, even about money, where we don't fundraise. We ask God for money. We don't ask people for money. If people say, do you need money? We say, yes, we'll always take it. But I remember thinking, the problem for the Free Burma Rangers and for me personally isn't, do I have enough money? It's, do I have the wisdom to spend what I have? God, give me the wisdom to spend what I have. The problem with the American military is we don't have enough money or guns or tanks. It's how do you wisely employ those assets? Because you can have all the ones in the world. If you don't employ them right, they don't get a lot done. And so that's our situation. So to me, it comes down to praying, God, how do you want me to use what I have? I want more so I can help more, but give me first wisdom to use what I have in the best way. And, Afghanistan now is being turned over to the Taliban, which is tragic. But the things you did opened some doors where maybe, just maybe, there'll be some ways to talk to some people. I don't know. I've been to Afghanistan only twice, visiting friends, the Taubmans. And if you remember, there was a German mission. He was German. It's called Shelter Now. They had 2 American volunteers, and they were captured by the Taliban for showing the Jesus film before 9/11, and they were going to be executed. And they said one of the worst days was September the 10th, because Massoud was killed in the Panjshir Valley. The head of the Northern Alliance was killed by Al-Qaeda. And then 9/11 happened the next day. And these missionaries, German and American, together thinking, this is the end of my world. And but then the coalition got into action, the US got into action. And my friend George said he was in Kabul, in the prison in Kabul in October. So a little bit later, when the airstrikes were coming, and he was, you've seen TV Mountain there in the middle of Kabul, that mountain with all the antennas on it. We called it TV Mountain anyways. And he said, I was looking at the toilet, which had the only window, and the mullah was announcing from the top of the mountain about the American attacks. He said, this will be the mother of all. And he never finished the sentence because the JDM came right then and took out that radio station on top of that mountain. And then they were rescued by U.S. Special Forces after that. And then they were the first missionaries and NGOs back. George Taubman was the first guy back, and with Shelter Now right away. And when I went to visit him, which was after the fighting, I wasn't involved in any of that. We were in Burma. I was invited. It was in 2002 or 3. I can't remember. Anyways, we went to visit him, and in Kabul. And I remember we walked up on top of there's 2 mountains right there in Kabul. We walk up there, and we met a mullah, a Muslim religious leader. And George is this big German guy with a big beard, and he's wearing a shower camise and all that. And he's obviously, though, a foreigner, because like you said, they can tell in a second.
Right.
And he went up to the mullah and just hugged him. And the mullah looked at him kind of like, oh, who are you? You're a foreigner. What are you doing here? And I was there looking totally like a foreigner. Hugged him. And then he told the mullah, God bless you in Isa's name, in Jesus' name. And smile. And the mullah could feel this guy's love and respect. I thought, wow, you can make a difference. And so I don't know the future for Afghanistan. It's not a place we've been called to go. I'd go. I don't know what we could do there, but this is where we are now in Burma and Iraq and Syria. But I appreciate what you did. And nothing of love is ever wasted. Everything of love is eternal. So everything you did there that's a love is going to go on, not just in this life, but after that. And so my prayer for the Afghan people is they can find love. Because finally, without love, democracy doesn't even work. Love has to be the key.
Yeah, you're right, man. You're right. If you really could quickly close us out by telling us what's the best way to support you guys, what's the best way to get you guys to show up at your church, to show the film and talk, whatever it is that you all do. And then again, because I don't want to be the last person, but the first person, I just want to keep on saying it. Thank you for what you do. It really is important work. And we have all this struggle and strife here in the nation. You realize folks are struggling to stay alive and not doing it, and still, like, as their crops fail and as they get attacked and as their people die, they still have to go forward each and every day. And you guys can't have enough help. And so if anybody is interested in helping, listen to what David has to say next on how to help and how to get involved. And just, we all need to, as I always say, we talk about the 1%, scope the camera back. We are all the 1%. We're all so very fortunate. And if this isn't your fight, then fair enough. But understand that the great work that David and the Free Burma Rangers and your family, you're raising some incredible people in your family there, David. And so again, thank you for what you do, and to take on this work that someone has to do. And I'm so glad that's you that's doing it, because you've got it down.
Thanks. And I mentioned my family. Well, my wife that can do this. She runs all our kids program. I remember my daughter Susan. She was, I think, 8 or 9. We were in Sudan. And she said, Daddy, we're not just a family, we're a team. And they love it. Like here in Burma, they're racing their horses across the fields. They have a great life of freedom. And it's a blessing to be together. I don't take them right to fighting, at least I try not to. But wherever a family is, they're there. And they've really learned a lot about different cultures and how love bridges all gaps. In terms of help, I really appreciate your show. And I hope I get to meet you face to face, man. You're already my hero. And I really love to hear your experiences in the Middle East and Iraq and Afghanistan. And if we make it to California this year, I'm in Burma right now, I'll look you up and love to get to know you. In terms of the Free Burma Rangers, we have a website, freeburmarangers.org. You can donate through that site directly through a little tab, or there's an address you can mail a check to. I think the most important thing is pray. Like you said, it may not be your fight. Pray and say, God, what do you want me to do? And it may not have nothing to do with the Free Burma Rangers. It may be about your wife and your kids and your neighbor or your husband or whoever. And another thing you can do is pray for us. And another thing is, if you feel moved about Burma or Iraq, Syria, talk to your government representative. Tell them you care. So that does make a difference. I have friends who are congressmen, and they always pay attention when people take the effort to reach out to them because they're trying their best. I guess I'll close with this one statement that a congressional friend of mine said. His name is Louis Gohmert. He said, Dave, some of the best people in America come into Congress asking, what can I do? And then somewhere along the line, many of us begin to ask, what can I get? What can I become? And I thought, and that's what goes wrong. And I thought, that's not just congressmen, that's all of us. That's all of us. Me too. Starts off with, how can I help? Or what can I get? And so I think, to me, it's God, help me always be about, what can I do? That's more fun anyway. And you're going to take care of the things I need. So thank you so much, everyone who listened. And thank you, your team there, Pete. And hope I get to see you all. And God bless you in Jesus' name.